The Grind, a Minnesota sports podcast.
Welcome into The Grind, a Minnesota sports podcast. My name is Tim, and I'm the host of this podcast. A big Minnesota Vikings topic to discuss today because the Vikings are running out of time, and there is a position within the Vikings roster that is very, very unsettled and has to make the decision makers within the Vikings organization very, very nervous right now. But first, let me tell you about 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis, because they transformed our bathroom in 48 hours, and that's their promise for you as well. If you have a bathroom project that needs to get done, big or small, contact 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis. We got a new floor, a new bathtub, a new shower, surround, shower heads, all of the above. We went from a single to a double sink, a new mirror, vanity, countertops. Everything in our bathroom was remodeled in 48 hours. Why wait 8 weeks when 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis promises a bathroom remodel in 24 to 48 hours? Free consultations are available. Affordable payment plans also are available. 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis. There's a reason why 5 stars in their name, because they produce 5-star work. 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis. The position that is as unsettled as you could have it possibly be when you have the best wide receiver in football on your roster is the wide receiver position. Based on the scenario the Vikings have been dealt this offseason, with Justin Jefferson's hamstring issue, with Jordan Addison's 3-game suspension, and Jalen Naylor's hand being an issue. When it rains, it pours, and it has poured on the Vikings wide receiver room this offseason. And it's a terrible time for it to happen, because the last thing you want is J.J. McCarthy throwing balls to wide receiver 4s and wide receiver 3s, acting like wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s. And with the preseason running out of time and training camp running out of time, the Vikings have to figure out the direction that they're going, because there's a Kevin Seifert piece on ESPN, because he wrote about it, and it's the most popular subject right now outside of Max Brosmer. Here's what he said. Wrong one. Here's what he had to say about the Vikings wide receiver room. Okay, this is just like terrible right now. The screen isn't sharing, and it's scaring, and I'm clicking the wrong page. This is just a disaster. Here we go.
With no regard.
Yes. Here's what it says. Justin Jefferson's return comes at a time where the Vikings receiver position is unsettled. Jordan Addison will serve a 3-game NFL suspension to start the season, and presumptive number 3 receiver Jalen Naylor hasn't practiced since suffering a hand injury last week during joint practices with the New England Patriots. O'Connell said, Naylor is figuring out what the best plan of action for return to play will be. The coach who classified Naylor's status as week to week would not say whether surgery is an option. A few concerning things in this paragraph from the Vikings and Jalen Naylor. One, it talks about him being week to week, which is different than day to day. And 2, it says figuring out what the best plan of action for a return to play will be, which tells me it's not a black and white, cut and dry, okay, miss a week of practice and you're back and you're 100% healthy. The fact that surgery is an option for Jalen Naylor should tell us everything we need to know about Jalen Naylor's injury. And what's also known about Naylor is that he can be at times Sir drops a lot. And If you're going to throw in a hand injury with Sir drops a lot, then there's probably an issue moving forward with wide receiver 2 while Jordan Addison is out. But you throw in TJ Hawkinson into the mix, and you got Justin Jefferson, wide receiver 1, Hawkinson, wide receiver 2, but then who's wide receiver 3? This issue wasn't an issue until Jalen Naylor went down with his injury, because he could fit in as wide receiver 3, his normal role. TJ Hawkinson fits in as wide receiver 2 while Addison is out, and things are just fine for 3 weeks. But now Naylor seems iffy. Justin Jefferson, I'm not concerned about his injury, because you've seen videos in practice and he's doing these little spins and things like that. Sitting Jefferson out of practice wasn't because really of his injury, but more so of fear that really there's no depth left and we need you to be healthy by week 1. So he did some individual work yesterday and he's fine. I'm not concerned at all about Jefferson, and neither should you. But the problem is there's no insurance plan on this thing. If the house goes down, who's left? Right now there's a fire within the Vikings wide receiver room, and there's no insurance policy. Because if one more guy goes down, if Hawkinson gets hurt, who he kind of ifed up his groin during training camp practice a few weeks ago, if Justin Jefferson hamstring gets re-aggravated, and he's had issues with that this offseason or this training camp and a few years ago, if something else happens to the Vikings room, then they're screwed. And it's going to be a disaster. But what the Vikings are battling right now is, it's not a week 1 through week 17 issue, or whatever, week 18 issue right now. The issue is week 1 through week 3. It's not like, okay, well, we're going to bring on this guy for the entire season because Addison's out for the entire. He's only out 3 games. So it's like, how can we get ourselves to week 3 just fine so that we can get all of our guys back and then hit our stride in week 4? So that's the internal battle the Vikings are struggling with right now. Jefferson, we're fine with you, but Naylor, week to week hand injury, you drop it quite a bit. Hawkinson, you've had your injury issues in the past. Addison, you're out 3 weeks. It's like, what is the perfect formula to bridge the gap for the first 3 weeks of the season? And I think the Vikings have to go out and sign someone or trade for a guy. And I was looking at their draft capital for next season, and the Vikings have enough draft capital to take a 4th round pick, which they have, and trade it for a wide receiver that a team doesn't want anymore. And what's so surprising is you can get a lot with a 4th round pick. A 4th round pick might seem like nothing, but teams will take on a 4th round pick to get rid of a guy for a pick that they don't want to keep anymore. So the Vikings need to be scouring the market for a wide receiver that a team doesn't want anymore. And trade a 4th round pick for him. Trade a future 5th round pick for him. Because there is no insurance policy in the Vikings wide receiver room. And it appears by all means that Naylor isn't going to be fully ready for week 1. And let's just make this clear. Justin Jefferson not practicing and trying to prepare for week 1 versus Chicago on Monday Night Football is much different than Jalen Naylor not practicing and him trying to be ready for week 1 in Chicago. Jefferson has greatness, and he has an amazing skill set and attributes that Jalen Naylor doesn't possess. The hands, the route running, everything else in between. And just the fact that he draws 2 to 3 defenders to him on every single play makes a big difference, whether he's 90% or 100%. Jalen Nailor not practicing for weeks and then trying to get ready for week 1 doesn't make me comfortable about his readiness and his preparedness to play in week 1 against Chicago. So that's something else to consider as well. Jefferson, fine, sit out of practice. I'm comfortable with him showing up week 1 and being ready. Nailor, not so much. And the Vikings need to consider that. And with only one preseason game left, the starters ain't playing, not a big deal. But it would be nice to bring in a guy now to get acclimated and comfortable weeks before the regular season kicks off. Because I don't think you want to wait until the last second to provide an insurance policy on your wide receiver room. I think you want to make it happen now. Why are you going to wait a week before the regular season kicks off, either to sign a guy that got released or to trade for a guy, when you have a few weeks right now to trade a 4th-round pick for somebody and bring him in? I think that's the way the Vikings should go. You've got to think long and hard, that's what she said, about the Minnesota Vikings wide receiver room right now, because there's a lot of issues going on in that area. And you don't want McCarthy throwing to players that aren't designed or skilled enough to be a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 for the first 3 weeks of the season. So it's a big thing that the Vikings need to think about. Let me tell you about Hochland Farms beef, 952-491-1541 for the best rotationally grazed grass-fed beef, 100% grass-fed beef. It is financially responsible to contact Hochland Farms because you can get them for about $4 a pound. And I'm not just talking about hamburger meat. I'm talking about steaks, chuck roast, ribs, and more. Hochland Farms, 952-491-1541. 952-491-1541. Tell Jared Tim sent you, and he'll give you 10% off your first order. Hochland Farms beef. Lots of things to discuss in the coming days. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and like button wherever you are watching. Well, you're watching on YouTube, but wherever you are listening. Appreciate you making this podcast a part of your day. This was The Grind, a Minnesota sports podcast.